Okay, it's time to screw the top to the bottom in these pre-drilled holes. A little bit harder than it looks. Get your husband to do it. Mine's not here, I'm going to do it myself. Now that we have our top back in position, it's time to measure for our skirt. The skirt's going to be attached to the top all the way around, so you'll need this diameter. I've already measured it to find out that it's 88 inches, but I wanted to tell you when you're measuring, be careful when you're measuring, hold it down as you measure in this inside curve so your measurement will be accurate. Our diameter is 88 inches, and that's going from center all the way back around to center, because that's where we want the skirt to stop so that we can open the swing arms. We also need the height measurement, and I'm going to measure from the top of the table to the floor is 28 inches. That's our finished length. There are several different styles of table skirt we could make. We could do gathered or pleated, but what I'm going to show you today is the very simplest one of all to make. It doesn't even require any stitching. We're going to use fusible webbing for everything. This is going to be a plain tailored table skirt with a decorative trim attached. And because I'm using a solid fabric, I'm going to show you how to cut it so that you don't have to use any seams. The diameter around the top of the table was 88 inches. We want the table skirt to overlap in the front so there won't be an open crack where the swing arms separate. So we're going to put a 1-inch overlap there, which means we're going to have to hem the sides of the fabric at that spot. So the side hems, we need to add 4 inches. That's 2 for each side. So that makes a total cut length for our width of fabric 93 inches. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut along the selvage edge, one continuous piece of fabric. Decorator fabric is usually 55 inches wide. So we're going to go the long way. Because we have a solid fabric, we can do that. And because it's Dupioni silk, it'll hang nicely that way. So our cut length needs to be 32 inches, and we came to that by taking the 28 inches, which was the finished length that we needed, adding 2 inches for top hems and 2 inches for bottom hems, means that we need for that to be 32 inches long. That's the cut length. So I've taken my silk fabric and marked it off 32 inches, and we're going to cut there. That'll be our cut length. Just for the record, if we were using a floral or a stripe or some sort of pattern fabric where we were going to need to go with the grain of the fabric, then we would have to make seams. The fabric would be 55 inches wide, and we would have to allow for the seams. So to make our 88-inch diameter, not only would we be adding the 1 inch for overlap and the 4 inches for side hems, but we would also need to add an additional inch for side seams, making our cut length be 94 inches for our width. We would still need the 32-inch length. So in order to get 94 inches, we would piece together a 55-inch piece, and the remaining math for that would be 39 inches, which we would split in half. So we would have a 19.5-inch side panel and another 19.5-inch side panel. And by the time we seamed all that together, taking up an inch, we'd still have 93 inches. So that's what you would do if you had a pattern repeat. We're doing it the simple way because we're going to have a solid fabric. Now I'm going to show you the cutting. Remember that we're going to cut on the length of this piece of fabric. This is the selvage edge, so therefore this is the crosswise grain that's 55 inches wide, and this is the lengthwise grain, which is, I have measured off to be 93 inches for our cut length. I'm going to use this selvage edge to turn under the top edge of my table skirt, that way it's nice and finished, but on the bottom edge I'm going to cut it with pinking shears. Meanwhile, I marked it with my straight edge and a piece of chalk to cut off my 32-inch length. And so we're ready to cut. This is one of the simplest table skirts to make because it requires no sewing. We're going to do everything with the iron and fusible webbing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn under one of the side hems using fusible webbing and an iron. But the first step in that is to just turn under one of the 2 inches that we had allowed for. We're going to do this twice so that we have a nice finished edge, no raw edges exposed. I'm going to use my hem gauge, and I'm just going to go an inch every few inches at an interval, and press, use a little steam, and it stays nice and flat. I'm going to do this all the way down the 32-inch cut length that we cut earlier. Okay, I've gone all the way down. Now it's time to do the second turn. This leaves me with a very neat finished edge. Okay, now that I have my 2-inch hem in place, I'm going to add the fusible webbing and make sure it stays put. So I'm just going to fold that back a little bit. It's already creased where it needs to go. I'm going to put the fusible webbing in there really close to the inside of the hem. You don't want that to hang out over the edge because it'll stick to the bottom of your iron. So push it under there really good. And then, as hot as your fabric can stand it, and I would suggest trying this on a scrap piece first, go over this again with the iron and some steam until it melts the fusible webbing. Once it melts the fusible webbing, it's not going to come unstuck again. See? It's there to stay. I'm going to do both sides that way. Now that we've got the side hems done, it's time to do the top and the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing there that we did on the sides. 1 inch, then another inch, then the fusible webbing. All the way around the 88 inches, 89 inches that we calculated earlier.